So I've implemented a lot of really cool but easy to implement features on my new 2024 preset that we're going to go over right now. So this year we're just going to go scene by scene because that's probably the most optimal way to go through this. So it all starts with my basic clean tone where I'm running straight into the USA JP2C Plus green channel. So that's the green channel of John Petrucci from Dream Theater's signature Mesa Boogie amplifier. It's based on a Mark II C Plus style clean tone. And as you can see, I'm running the gain pretty low. I have the bass set just below noon, scooped the mids, treble and presence at noon. And as you guys know, the secret to the Mark style amps is to use that 5-band EQ. So this is what mine looks like, and it gives me a nice full, clean, and clear tone that doesn't have any honky mid-range, there's no boomy low end, and the top end isn't shrill or too thin. All of my scenes are using the Tonemission IR Pack from John Petrucci. These are the Dream World Rhythm Blend with the room mic. These are Mesa 412s with 3 different microphones blended together. These are the exact impulse responses that are on Dream Theater's latest record, A View from the Top of the World, and they just sound perfect for literally everything. There's no style of music I wouldn't use these for. As always, at the end of my preset, I'm running a JFET compressor, which is based on an 1176. It's at a 2-to-1 ratio, attack and release set to pretty much default. And again, this is not compressing the dynamic range of my tone, but rather it's widening the overall sonic spectrum, and it's just preventing me from clipping the output so that even though everything is properly gain staged with the preset leveling tool, I never have to worry about clipping my output. It makes everything just fit in a mix better, and I still get all the dynamic range going into the front of the amp because this is ran at the very end of the signal chain, just like a piece of outboard gear at a studio. The other major difference that I'm doing this year is I'm running my effects in parallel instead of series, and this allows me to always have a dry copy of my guitar tone so that you get all of the definition, clarity, and punch of all of my different tones, and then you still get all of the benefits and coolness of these time-based effects blended in. Moving on to scene number 2, it is exactly the same as scene number 1, except we're adding a beautiful, lush stereo tri-chorus. I picked up this trick from watching Rick Beato's interview with Christopher Cross, and this is the type of chorus sound that he used on his debut record, which is one of my favorite records of all time. It really nails that yacht rock kind of guitar tone. So I use this tone so much during the night that it needs to have its own scene so that I don't have to click onto my clean channel and then always click on my chorus pedal. It's just easier to have it all in one scene. To add one more layer of kind of cool, clean tone, spacey vibes, we got my ambient preset where we have a slightly different chorus. We have the Dimension 1 set to kind of like a Dream Theater-esque kind of chorus. We have a dual delay here to just add some repeats and some space to the tone. We have the Andromeda reverb, which is modulating and giving a shimmer-based effect with some pitch shifting, as you can see here. We've got some really cool stuff being done there. And again, because we're running in parallel, you set the mix to 100%, and then you just dial in the amount of level that you want the effect to come into so that you're effectively blending in the wet. Now, one more thing I want to point out real quick is just like last year, my drive block and my delay block are both tied to control switch 1, which allows me to effectively have a solo boost feature on all of my other scenes. The reason why they're still turned on for the ambient scene is because if I don't have them tied together, I still have to manually turn them all on and off and whatnot, and it's just easier to do things this way because if I want a solo tone on any other scene, I press one button, it gives me an overdrive, it gives me a delay, and it gives me a volume boost. So what I do is I just have the mix set to 0. That's via a scene controller, but that's why you see the drive block on, even though the mix is set to 0, so it's not affecting the tone at all. It's just the only way that I can get the drive and delay blocks to always be linked together. Scene 4, now we start to get into some gain territory. For my mid-low gain tones this year, we're running with the Friedman Brown Eye. This is the V1 model. I've got the gain just below noon, bass in the middle, treble just above noon, a little bit of mid-scoop. I cranked the presence a little bit. Everything else is at default. And this gives me a nice dynamic gain tone. This is basically the smoothest, most punchy, powerful, least amount of fizz Marshall style tone that you're going to achieve on this unit. The Friedman amps are super responsive, they're very dynamically responsive, and it really reflects when I play certain tunes where maybe I dig in a little less in the verse and then I dig in more on the chorus. It almost sounds like I'm turning on an overdrive pedal, but it's all done with just the right hand, and that's why I love how this amp sounds. Reverb wise, we have just a little bit of a plate reverb sneaking in just to add a little bit of width and space. I don't want too much though, because if you over reverb your gain tones, it gets super muddy and you lose a lot of clarity that way. Scene 5 is exactly the same, except this time we've got solo tone turned on. That's where this beautiful dual delay comes on. This is the same one that I was using last year. This is based on the Petrucci kind of thing, where the delays are going to feed back into each other, and it just creates this real nice searing lead tone that has a lot of space and width to the notes. And we're boosting that with the BB preamp overdrive pedal. Gain at noon, bass at noon. Scoop a little bit of the treble out because we don't want it to be too harsh or aggressive here. Level set to 10. Everything else is the same. Moving on to scene number 6, this is my piezo tone, so when I need an acoustic guitar tone, I ain't bringing out my Martin. That doesn't fit in my beautiful Quantum Industries triple guitar case over there, so I just use the piezo pickup in my Musicman Majesty, and it sounds just like an acoustic guitar, especially in a full band mix live. I'm using the wonderful Holy Grail C800 PZ2 IR from worshiptutorials.com. You guys got to go check them out. They're not a sponsor or affiliate, and I think they sound fantastic. Reverb-wise, I have a little bit of a room sound that's blended in just to add a little bit of depth to the guitar, as if a microphone was placed just in front of it. Gives it less of a DI clicky sound. And then same settings on the compressor. Scene 7, this is my favorite new tone that I have, and it's just based off of the JP2C plus yellow channel. I was using the red channel before, which was always really meant as more of a lead channel, and it sounded phenomenal. You guys know that that's been my main rhythm tone on this channel for years, but digging back into the yellow channel, which was always supposed to be the rhythm style channel, this is a massive, massive rhythm tone that is tight, it's big, it's aggressive, but it's so smooth at the same time. Output EQ set to John specs. Everything sits in the mix perfectly. It doesn't get lost, and it just creates this beautiful wall of tone. Since I'm the only guitar player, I want a bigger sounding guitar tone that fits really well with the bass and the keyboard. So that's why we have these mids scooped out, is because we need to make room for other instruments, and we also need to sit in the mix a certain way. So that's how I have that set up. And last but certainly not least, the red channel makes a return here on my lead tone. We got the gain almost goosed out. 10 was just a little too much for me. Got a little bit of the bass back in, got a little bit less treble, a little bit more presence. I'm not using the presence shift anymore because it's just not necessary with the treble and presence set on the higher settings. You don't need to shift where that frequency range is. It really depends on your guitar. If you're playing 7 strings or 8 strings, the presence shift is going to really add a lot of clarity to your tone. But for me, playing in standard tuning with 6 strings, not necessary. Output EQ set kind of similarly. I want a little less bite and attack, and I put a little bit more mid-range and low mids in just to kind of help the tone sing a little bit more. We have that same dual delay from before, and I have just that little bit of plate reverb creeping in as well. So now we're going to go over some of the blocks that aren't always on for this scene so that you can see what I'm turning on and off manually throughout the night. And it all starts here with the pitch block. I switched back from the virtual capo to the dual chromatic because I think it sounds better. There's a lot less latency and it seems to track better. So Fractal definitely needs to work on the quality of their virtual capo because this stock dual chromatic type is just working infinitely better. So I have a half step down, I have a whole step down, I have a octaver. Then we have the wah block. I have 2 different styles of wah. I have one for my clean channel set to -3 on the level, and it is the Clyde style wah block. This is just for funky kind of stuff and some stabs, little filter sweeps, and that kind of stuff. Moving on to the phaser, just Script 90, Eddie Van Halen style, just when I need to add a little bit of movement to power chords or certain lead lines, especially on some of the funky stuff. It just helps to add a little bit of space and some character to the tone, and it helps it just kind of sit somewhere else in the mix so that you can kind of tell that there's a guitar going on, which is really cool. This graphic EQ here, this is used for one reason only, and that's when I bring a single coil guitar like my LSL T-Bone or my incoming Satakoy. Obviously, single coils are less powerful than humbucking pickups, so I have just a basic volume boost of about 4 to 5 decibels that helps the clean channel now balance with the humbuckers so that I'm not getting any volume drop when I swap guitars. Super easy trick to implement if you have 2 different style guitars that you want to use the same preset for. The tremolo. The tremolo is here for literally one song for a wedding that I just did with Crash the Party, and that's it. I'm probably not going to use tremolo that often. I really just don't find it necessary. We did go over the chorus, but when we get to the high gain stuff, I like to have the Dimension 1 chorus in so that if I want to play a really big chord in the chorus of a song, it just makes it sound massive. It expands it. It gives it almost like a pseudo stereo effect, even though we're running in mono, and it just adds a ton of width and character to the tone. So I highly recommend you play around with using the phaser in chorus for big open sections of your music. It can add a lot to it. And finally, we have the rotary block. I kick this on when I want to sound like an organ, and the keyboard is playing maybe a piano patch or a stringer horn patch, and maybe there's not a guitar part on the record, or maybe I just want a different sound or style, and this does the Leslie thing fantastic. Fractal did a really great job with the rotary. Last but not least, we have the input block. I mean, I'm just running it as a noise gate. It's set a little bit higher for the high gain stuff and a little bit lower for the clean stuff. Basically, I just have it where if I'm not touching the guitar, I don't want to hear any excess noise or 60 cycle hum. And then on the output block, all I have here are a 3 dB boost on my 2 lead channels. That is post compressor, so that I'm not compressing the lead tone at all. I'm getting a pure 3 dB volume boost there. Last but certainly not least, we have the gapless switching. I'm running the firmware 6.0 beta, whereas at the timing of this video, this is the latest firmware for the FM9, where I have seamless scene switching. There is zero delay or latency between switching all of your effects, amps, and caps on and off, and it's faster, honestly, than running a pedal board through my tube amp. That's how insane this is. The spillover is set to all, so that way your reverb and delay trails linger. The gapless switching is on, so that means everything is super fast. I'm running at +4 dBu because we use professional sound equipment and no output EQ necessary. I've been getting a lot of questions about how I lay out my foot switches, so I figured I'd go over that real quick before we end today's video. The first button, I have toggling my 2 main clean tones, and then when I hold it down, I get that ambient tone. So this keeps 3 scenes on one button. It's super easy to implement. The next button is a pretty similar feature where I switch between my mid-gain tone and my mid-gain tone with a solo boost. And then if I hold it down, I'll get that solo boost on any other scene so that I always have a boost to toggle on and off. The third button, pretty similarly, I have my high gain tone, my high gain lead tone, and if I press and hold that, it'll always default me to that higher gain lead tone because I use it so often. Next, we have the piezo on and off. So I press it once, it turns on my acoustic tone, and then when I press it again, it goes back to the last scene I use. So it's really nice to have that feature when you have a song where maybe you go from an acoustic to maybe a gain part back to acoustic. I just have to press one button and it'll toggle back and forth for me. And then when I long press it, I turn the tremolo on and off. I put the tremolo here because of how infrequently I use it. It's just out of the way and I don't really have to think about where it is. After that, we have our lead and solo boost. So this is basically just a redundant lead switch where I press it once, it goes to that high gain lead tone. And if I hold down the button, I get that solo boost on all my scenes. So it's just a redundancy there in case I just look down and I'm like, oh, lead, I'm taking a lead right now. I can press that button and it'll put me there without having to think about which scene am I on. Make it super easy, make it redundant. I don't need to turn anything else on or off, so it's a great use for that button. Then, of course, we have the tuner. It's set to just a tap so that it's an instant on, instant off, mutes my signal completely. Then here on the top row, we have all of our modulation effect bypasses. I can turn my chorus on and off, my rotary on and off. Over here, we have the phaser. If I long press, it turns on that graphic EQ for my Telecaster so that it stays on for the duration of me holding the guitar. I don't have to manually turn it on scene by scene, and that's because if you check here, when I go to turn it on, because it's on a control switch, no matter what scene I select, it's going to stay on and give me that boost no matter where I am. And then finally, we come to the pitch block, turn it on and off, and then I have it here to wrap around my different tunings and the octave effect that I use so that I can just cycle between them throughout the night. Thanks for watching this video, and if you guys have any more questions, feel free to hit me up. This preset, as always, is available for purchase. Shoot me an email. My contact is in the description below. You can also reach out to me on social media at Zach Seif Music. I'm on Instagram the most, so that's a good place to catch me. Until next time, everyone, keep on practicing, keep on following your dreams.